Hello and welcome back to this series on learning Java, and today we're talking about constructors. I have already the code from the last video, which is a class called person. It has properties called name, age, and favorite number, and this method called info that prints the information about the person. And then one example person named Amanda. She's 20 years old and her favorite number is 576. We did all of this already, so I'm not going to go over this code again. But now we're going to look at a way that we can shorthand what I've done here. I declared a variable, a new object, and then I filled in all of the properties. There's a shorter way to do that because gets really messy if you have an object with a lot of properties. So we can shorten it by adding something called a constructor. We can go back up to the class and add something that looks like a method. You can start with public, but it's got a capital letter like a class, but it has parentheses like a method. And it's called person because the class is called person. A constructor has to have the same name as the class, and it has to have a capital letter. It doesn't need a return type because it doesn't return anything. You're not supposed to return anything about it. It just runs. I'm going to put in some arguments for this method, though. They're going to be the same variables as the things I declared up here, because that's what I want to give values to. I'm shorthanding this into one line of code. I'm going to add string name and age and another integer, and because I'm lazy, I'm going to call this fav number. You're going to see why. I'm also just lazy, so I want to make it shorter. And then, I have values for these. I pass them into this function, so I can assign them to these up here, which I don't have values for. So I'm going to call this.name, give it the value name. Now, what did I just do? Remember that the equal sign, the assignment operator, reads what's on the right side and puts it in the location that we defined on the left side. So the value on the right side is called name. There's a concept in programming called scope, which means whenever we're looking for the thing with a name, we look in our smallest block first and then go out from there. So our smallest block right now is this set of curly brackets inside the constructor method. And that defines what name is. So this name, because we didn't give it anything else to go by, is going to find that first name and stop there. This is a string. It's whatever we passed into the function. But here, I want to take this name, which is outside the function. If I just put name here, it would read this again and it wouldn't do anything. I also can't redefine something that's passed in. Maybe I can. Instead, I want to go here. And so I use a keyword called this. When we're using classes and objects, this refers to the object we're currently working with, this object. But it's not the function. And so it'll go outside, it'll find the object and then the property called name. So this is kind of an abstract, it's not a specific object. It's whatever object we happen to be working with inside the class person. But it's that object and its property called name, and we're assigning it to be the value of the name we passed in. I'm going to do the same thing for age, because I called them the same thing. I have to do that, or it will just redefine this to be itself. For favorite number, they have different names, so I don't have to do that. I can just do it this way, and it knows exactly what I'm talking about here, because I only have one of these. I don't have an inner scope version of this variable, so I don't have to worry about it being confused about which one I'm talking about. So that's a constructor. And now you're going to see that this line is throwing an error, because when I create a new person, it needs me to give it the arguments I gave it. This is why we have to repeat the class name and put parentheses here, because this is not saying just to make a new object of the class, but it's calling the constructor, person of string and int, and I didn't give it any arguments. So in order to make this work, I would have to put arguments in here. We're going to try this with the other person we talked about last time, Barry. I'm going to call it a new person named Barry. It's a person. I said this is going to throw us errors. We don't want this. Instead, let's go back here to the parentheses. Inside the parentheses, that's showing arguments of a function. We want his name, Barry, his age, 60, and his favorite number, 241, 2,401. And it shows me what these are up here, the different properties of the arguments of the method. It also shows me them in here because of the editor I'm using. Now I put a semicolon on it, and this won't throw me errors because I've given it the correct number of arguments it's expecting. Now, just before, I can call Barry.info, and it will output exactly what I'm expecting it to. Barry is 60 years old. Her favorite number is 2,401. You know it will print this because I've already defined the values. Now I can also change the properties of Barry. Just because I already defined the object doesn't mean it's completely static. I can still change parts of it. So say Barry's 5 years old. I'm going to redefine Barry's age. He's 5 years older. So now he's 65. And he's older, so he's a new favorite number. Barry, not favorite number. Now his favorite number is 5,407. So I've changed the values. If I call Barry.info again, it'll use the new values. And this time, Barry is 65 years old, and their favorite number is 5,407. Constructors are really simple. They just take in whatever properties you give them, and then you can define your things up here, the properties that are going to change based on each person. If you had a property of an object that you wanted to always be the same, you don't need it in the constructor. You just give it a value here. You can also do other things in the constructor. Sometimes it makes sense to do other things when an object is created. But most of the time, you're just defining the properties of the object. That's it for this video. I'll see you next time.